Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Podcana. This is episode number 136. My name is Garrick. As always, my co-host Sky is with us, but we have another special guest, as we have been having every single week. This is a DLC champion, a CCQ winner, and qualified for the North American Championships for Disney Lorcana in season number 2, and I think most importantly, we should mention here that he dashed my dreams and beat me in the final round, the winning in of Milwaukee to get into day number 2. Zan Syed. Zan, how are you doing today?
Hello. Yeah, that was our unfortunate first meeting.
It's all. I looked at my match. I was like, "There's no way," because I was on Amber Steel. And I just played a Blurpole player who just drew the answer every turn. I was like, I got to 18 one game and 19 the other. And I was like, just don't draw an answer one time. And this match is over, right? And so I blew the Blurpole matchup. I won 3 of them. I lost 1. I was like 75%. You got to be pretty happy with that. I'll just win the last round. It'll be fine. And then it's like Zan. And I'm sure Zan is playing dogs. My worst matchup. I'm going to go in here and get smoked. And I did. But no, it was great playing you, of course.
I mean, I drew everything in there. and I also did my first take back ever.
Yeah, that was true. You were like, I'm gonna do a take back because of the thing, and I was like, yeah, did, and it was fine. It was like one little. I think it was one action, a challenge, I believe.
It was one of my goals for that day to like try it one time in the DLC, so you just like get over that hump of doing it.
And it was me.
And it was you, yeah.
Oh, well, now you can say you would have beat Zan if it wasn't for the take back monster, right?
Take it back. Because like during that turn, I actually was like, all right, as long as he doesn't do this, I might have a chance. And then you didn't do that, and you're like, I'm gonna do a take back and do it. I was like, of course he saw it. So like maybe there was a world that I had a chance, but I believe that was game number 2. You already won game number 1. But yeah. It was awesome playing against you. Of course, Zan is all over the place right now, playing in all these different DLCs, all these different events, but you're the host of the Club Lorcana podcast, which is awesome every single week with Jeremy, special guests plus Panda. And then now you're doing a podcast with your team. So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we're doing one with Rare Hunters. That's Earlmeister and Spessy. I actually met Spessy and Sky at the same time in Seattle. We went for pizza, which was sweet. I've gotten to know these guys over the last season, and they're just like really fun guys. And so it wasn't like a requirement by the team, but I was like, why don't we just do another podcast, right? Like I do one with my friends. I want to do one with my new friends that are super dedicated, who are like even more dedicated to Lorcana. So I was like, let's try it out, and we vibed. So we posted the first episode. Let's see where it goes, just experimenting.
Yeah, I think it's really cool for all the like top teams have their own podcast where they can talk about how their like internal testing is going, what they think is going on. I think it's really valuable to the community. Podcana tries to bring some of that as well, but Sky is on the Maelstrom podcast from time to time. So it's just great to see all of that. Before we get into the episode, which I would like to say, we're doing something a little bit different today. We wanted to talk about deck building, specifically how you can approach deck building in a new meta. You've got 2 of the best deck builders in Disney Lorcana, in my opinion, in the show today. Sky, of course, with the Truby Tuesday, his mark of mastery there, his CCQ win, which mean, so many people were playing that specific list that topped the Milwaukee event, and then of course Zan has made a bunch of different decks, blew up with the Oswald, of course. I think that's probably your most famous deck, and then the Monstro combo was absolutely huge for you as well. So we're going to talk about deck building. We hope you guys really like it. But before we get into all of that, I would like to first shout out our sponsors, of course, Heavy Play. If you'd like to save 10% off, you can do that using code PODCANA. As well as the Ink Inc. Open, which is coming up closer and closer and closer. We're just 10 days away from the Ink Inc. Open. This is a CCQ out here in the DMV area. If you can make it, please come out. It's going to be 9 rounds of Disney Lorcana. We're cutting to the top 16, but we have prize support from Ravensburger. That's convention playmats for this year, non-foil promos. Of course, the winner will get an invitation to that North American Championship, and it's also a PPG Summit qualifier, so we've got it all all going on. I know Zan, unfortunately, you cannot make it to this one, but Jeremy, I hear, is coming out.
Yeah, Jeremy and I think Nathan is on the fence of going. We're
Mm-hmm.
trying to push him to come. But yeah, we really want to come and support you guys. You guys always come down to CCS. So, I mean, I just love the Baltimore community. I used to go play a lot of Magic in that community.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm glad to see the Lorcana community growing there as well.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So if you're in the area, you got 10 days to figure out if you're going to come down, or if you're not, get a ticket real quick, fly out, take a train, whatever you got to do. Get out to the Ink Open, win the whole thing, and get qualified. Why not? We've also got 2 more events out on the West Coast this time. One of them is an Infinity CCQ, which we talked about, the Enchanted Citrus class, and the other is the Glimmer Games, which is going to be in Roseville in March. That is core constructed. 2 great events, both CCQs as well. So if you're on the West Coast, you're on the East Coast, you got plenty of options to play Disney Lorcana here in season number 2. And I absolutely love the CCQs, as do you guys, I'm sure, 2 CCQ winners. And I'd like to start there. You both won these CCQ events with really like pet decks that you were able to see what the meta was like, attack the meta, and bring a list that not necessarily everybody was expecting or everybody was on. So I'm going to open it up. Sky, I'd like you to start. What is your approach in a new set when you're trying to deck build and figure out what you want to do? Because I feel like once the meta is established, you can attack certain things, but when the meta is brand new, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think what most people tend to start to do is what I would do as well, is just find what's the most raw power. Like, what is the value engines that we see with these new cards in this set? Like, what can we build that's just like strong no matter what we're doing? And that's like, sometimes I think it's so powerful at the start of a set that it's just like, okay, it doesn't really matter too much what the meta is. It's going to define the meta because it is the most raw, powerful thing. I also like to just get experimental. Like, at a start of a format, it's like the best chance you have at kind of breaking a format, I guess, and like letting something come through and take over an event that maybe people didn't see. I'm kind of in that phase right now with this set. I'm still trying out funny stuff and not like straight up locking in what I think probably is the right play. But I think it's important. I think if you don't try these things at the start of a set, you're probably never going to try it. And you're never going to be that person that does find that dark horse deck. So I think starting out, just find something that you find really cool. Maybe people overlook it. Oh, hey, these 2 cards together make a lot of value, and take it as far as you can. A lot of times, even if it's not the best deck, it's it's up there. And sometimes that like shroud of not knowing what you're exactly doing is worth the 1 or 2 percentage points in certain matchups. So get creative. I think at the start of a set, that's when it's best.
Yeah, Zan, how do you feel about the beginning of sets? How do you approach it when things are like very brand new? We had the last set, we had the last meta. We're probably going to follow a similar pattern with a new meta, but there are a lot of powerful cards coming in with these new sets, and figuring out like how they work best must be a challenge.
Yeah, so there's 3 things I look at. First thing is like what tournament I'm playing in, right? Because there's like a sandbox phase. I would say that's the number 1 phase, where you're just trying everything. Then once you gear in and lock in, I need to prepare for this event. So for example, if you were going to the CCQ, or if you were going to Melbourne, I think you would have a bit of a different approach. I think that a dark horse approach is really great to win a CCQ. Amber, when Sky won with Amber Steel, I wasn't surprised at all that he won. But the thing about his choice was he had a much more consistent build of Amber Steel, which was really, really well positioned for that tournament. And yeah, so for my CCQ, I was like, I want to bring in Monstro combo. That's something people are not going to be prepared with, because you're really trying to prepare for the top cut, right? Because you're trying to catch people off guard, and gives you a higher chance of winning the tournament. Whereas if I was going to Melbourne, I just want to make top 32, and then see how it plays out from there. So I might take a Blurpole deck or a Dogs deck, just because I know it's like it's proven itself over time. So I rather just take the consistent thing. So it depends on the tournament that I'm trying to prepare for. But I really like the sandbox approach of trying everything, because even if you don't end up playing it, if you run into like the right version of that deck that you sandbox early on, you will have enough information to be able to combat it in the tournament. Otherwise, you could just lose to it. A great example is in my CCQ. I was playing Monstro combo, and I played against Brainiac in the first round of top 16. I had never played Monstro combo into Brainiac, especially in the set 10 version as opposed to the set 9 version. And I kind of had to just think about, okay, how am I going to approach this matchup on the spot, as opposed to getting a match into it and like figuring out a game plan ahead of time. And so since I had played against it in set 9 in Bologna, like right before I had come out, just because I was interacting with some of the lounge members, it that knowledge really ended up helping me out in the future. And I was like, oh, the key to this matchup is just slam all your great illuminaries, and they can't deal with that card, and that card can draw you cards after when they make you discard your whole hand. So yeah, I think that the sandbox approach is really, really important. I think limited is also really important. So if you go play in your pre-release, I don't think you can ever be too good to like not to go play in your pre-release. You'll be surprised at the great ideas you can come up with from your pre-release.
I agree with that completely. I love doing the pre-release every single set. It's like my favorite thing that I look forward to. When I played Magic like in 2010, 2011, limited was my favorite thing to do. I love to draft, and like there's not a ton in Disney Lorcana, so whenever I get the opportunity to do it, it's absolutely a blast. And this set and the last set have felt so good to play from a limited perspective, and getting to play these new cards for the first time does feel really good, and I completely agree with that. I know Sky was talking about his insane. You did a draft, right? Not a limited, or sorry, not a sealed pool. You did a draft, and you were getting insane cards the entire time.
Yeah, it was, I think, the first Lorcana draft I ever did. I showed up to the event thinking it was sealed, but it was draft, and I was like, okay, well, we're gonna find out if this is fun or not. And there was actually a lot of people. We had like 4 different pods of 8. It was
Wow.
it was a ton of fun. Like I didn't prepare at all. I was just like, it was fun to get into the packs and like read every card, and like they weren't super stringent on time, so you could take time and read everything. And like finding the right picks was really fun. And like, finding what cards are your strongest and what you like really want to push for like early on was a fun thing to do. And I think they did a super good job in like having enough of those cards where you can, 5 picks in, be like, okay, well, I got these 2 strong cards. I kind of want to try to go for this type of curve and play around that. So it felt like a full on draft experience, which I don't think we've had with Lorcana so far, which was nice.
Yeah, when you were playing it, like Zan mentioned, did you find any cards that you were like, maybe I need to sneak this into a deck or two?
Yeah, the Scrooge card was my favorite. The two cost uncommon Scrooge. I'm sure if you've played in a draft event or sealed, you know about this card because it's uncommon.
A menace.
It's broken.
Yeah, it's just a uninkable 2-cost 3/3 that quests for 1, and it has boost 1. It just gives it +1 attack, +1 toughness or willpower with the boost, and you can do it every turn pretty easily in limited, and it's not very punishing. So I mean, if you think about this card at worst, you play it on turn 3 as a 4/4, right? You just play it and boost it. Like we have cards like Lexington, the new GG that are very similar stat lines to that, and it's played. Obviously, you can't sing songs, but that doesn't really matter at all in draft. And it has the upside of being able to just fill out your ink more in the late game and just like take over. So that card is crazy. I actually have like a lot of hope for it in like core eventually, like being able to have a big body that's like tempo heavy, like holds up their board, and then being able to threaten to bounce it and draw like 3 cards off it, like seems super fun to me. I built a red purple deck with it, and I think it's like pretty good. I mean, I beat like all the main contenders, but I don't think it's like the best deck. So, but yeah, cards like that are just fun to see, and like I do think it gets your brain flowing on some of the new strong cards, and like you can see, oh, this card is pretty strong. I can maybe play it in core, and you think of a couple lines, and then you start thinking, okay, yeah, maybe I can build a whole deck around this, and like that's the like the sandbox mode that I think Zan is talking about. That it's important to as a deck builder think of these couple of lines and say, okay, I'm not just like throwing together the good cards in this Blurpole deck and skirting my way to wins, like finding out these exact lines, finding out what to look for in lines, like makes you such a better deck builder, and doesn't just you play all the good cards and hope you get the good ones at the right time, right?
Yeah.
Sky, in your draft, was there a color restriction?
No, you could just Taking any
Any
cards,
color?
yeah, no
Okay.
color restriction. So
And did you play with the new 35 card rule?
yeah, we did. Yep. So
Oh, nice.
I was opening Scrooge like every game, pretty much.
How many did you have?
I only had two, but
Okay,
I
that's
like
still a lot for an uncommon.
my deck was
right?
so I had two Scrooge, two Christopher Robin. So whenever I went second, I would start with that, and then he would hold up the attackers. I could just quest for two. I also played 3 Snow Forts. So
Yeah.
like
Oh wow.
pretty much if I opened like Scrooge, Snow Fort, their only chance was if they had the Donald that was item removal, which most people I don't think played other than like sideboarding in. So the deck was gross. Like it was insane.
Yeah, the Donald Duck was well, no, Scrooge was really good with Ohana, means family. It was just like,
Gosh, Ohana was gross too. I
it
played
was
against somebody
so
with that.
crazy. Yeah, that card's crazy. The other card that was crazy is the 4-cost uninkable that says whenever your character quests that turn, you draw a card. So it costs 4 and
Yeah,
uninkable.
It's the other Scrooge, right?
No. I'm talking about
The Willow
it's a
card.
action. The Willow action.
Someone
Oh,
played that
yeah,
against
yeah,
me in
yeah.
a blitz. I lost the game on the spot. As soon as they played, I was like, "Yep, it's over."
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, that card was absolutely. That was the only match I lost. Was the last match they played that. They had the Scrooge. They had the Bell as well. That like anytime one of their things got banished, it went to the Inkwell, and they had infinite cards, infinite ink. I was like, I can't win this. I can't win this.
Yeah, the design in this limited set was really good. One card that I felt like was really good in the limited set was it cost 2. It was an action inkable purple, and it said put all the cards underneath a character on the bottom of their deck in any or in random order. I don't know, but you draw a card, and yeah, whenever that Hercules would quest, there was a Hercules that cost 1 that you could quest to make it into that you could
Boost 2, yeah.
yeah, boost 2 to put a card underneath. That was just like the biggest blowout ever, and the best
And the
answer to
Scrooge
Scrooge
too,
was
yeah.
that. Yep. So I really like I really like the attention to detail that they had.
Yeah, the boost mechanic made limited so much more fun, and I could tell like as soon as like I started playing in Whispers, I was like, this is awesome. So I played like 3 limited events when I went to PAX, and I was having so much fun. But pivoting back to Core Constructed a little bit, we brought up the Monstro combo earlier, and I did want to talk about how we feel about it here in set 11. Of course, Zan, this is like your deck now, and I would like to say in Richmond, I was 2-0. Okay, I barely squeaked. I barely lost to Emerald Sapphire. I was playing Amethyst Steel. I got to 19, and I just couldn't get over the finish line. I missed a 1-drop, so I was like, it is what it is. I was like, it's all right. We'll go in round 2. It'll be fine. I play against full Monstro combo, and I have no chance. And I was like, Zan beat me in 2 DLCs now because of the Monstro combo. But here it is up on the screen, updated here for set 11. How do you feel about this deck? You have some new cards in here. Of course, Akud seems like a card that is just a build round card, like Sky mentioned. I feel like every list that I've seen from Sky is like, all right, how can I break this specific card because it seems so powerful? But you slot her in really nicely with Angel, with 1 Ohana means family. How do you feel like this deck will be positioned moving forward? And do you think that the new set added a lot to what you can do here?
I mean, I wouldn't say the new set gave me an abundance of things. It gave me more of an explosive draw, and it just kind of pushes this deck more in the direction of, here's a Dark Horse deck. If you put in the time, it can give you an edge over the field, just because people don't want to put in the time to learn how to play against the deck. So yeah, I just think that the deck is more explosive than it was last set because you have the chance at putting Monstro out when you only have access to 6 ink.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there was a rules there's like a rules issue with the judges that has kind of been figured out, which is we know the way can target itself, the one that you play. And that wasn't, even though I knew that it was the way that it worked, I couldn't get the clarification or agreements from some of the judges. But ever since I've gotten like full clarity on that, now it operates the way it does on Fight Club. It is I feel like it's taken the deck to a better place, but it's hard to compete against the Blurples, right? They are like an S tier deck that just got another great removal spell and let it go. So, I mean, it's hard to justify playing any deck, any other mid range deck over what's been the sauce since set 9.
Sky, how do you feel about Blurple in this newest set? Like you mentioned, it seems like you're playing the same thing that you've been playing since basically set 8 because most of the deck got reprinted, right? So, how do you feel about it? Do you think it's still at the top?
Yeah, I think Blurpole getting let it go kind of turns it back into the deck that it was when it was like 35-40% meta share. Having that much hard removal and like such a strong draw engine, and cards like Demona where you you're fine. Like if you look at Blurple, they can easily play a 5 cost and sing let it go. They already had Into the Unknown, so they had all these like ways to pitch their hand and like take out anything they want. And now it's just like Demona is even more scary on top of that. So I don't know. It seems like it's probably going to just take out every other mid-range deck. I don't think there's like much reason to play other mid-range decks. Like if you look at some of the other stuff that's interesting, like I know people are kind of hyping up the Detectives deck, and that deck is like fantastic and actually has like a super like crazy engine if you set up like 3 things and it's not too demanding to do that.
Which Detectives deck are you talking about?
The blue steel, like the one with the Judy and all that. Like if you read Judy, giving resist plus alert is crazy. Like that would dominate a Blurple board and you'd gain back value, but having 12 cards that just say remove these cards is like really, really bad. So yeah, Blurple getting let it go is tough. I think Blurple still struggles into the stuff that it struggled with back when it first started dominating, which is, aggro and probably green blue. Which is probably the only hope, but it's just like, do we really want to have a meta like this for like the only mid-range deck is Blurple? It's probably not the most fun, but
yeah. If you guys, I mean, Zan, you mentioned going into a CCQ, which we're going into the Ink Open here in 10 days. If you wanted to bring a deck that could spike the tournament, let's assume that we are going to see the majority Blurple, how would you start building a deck that would attack something like Blurple? Would you just go aggro? Would you look to control it more like Emerald Sapphire did last set? Where would you be your like starting place?
I mean, honestly, Sky and I have similar approaches. We've just both been beating up on Blurple the whole time. We just try different ways. I mean, dogs was the first way, and then I lean more into Monstro combo. And then I knew that green blue was a good option. I just didn't feel like green blue was beating dogs, and I wasn't willing to take the gamble. And so I ended up going with Monstro combo on that front. And then I have always liked Amber Steel. It just happened. Yeah, it was always just such a close decision for me between Amber Steel and dogs. And since Amber Steel was always a bigger percentage of, like, for example, when Sky was playing in the CCQ here in the States, I was in Sweden/Bologna, right, for a CCQ there. And yeah, I was like, okay, dogs is Amber Steel is enough of the meta here where I should be playing dogs to prey on it. It's because dogs was like not even, there was like 2 people or 3 people in my tournament that were playing it total. So I was like, I still think I should lean towards dogs as opposed to Amber Steel because I didn't. Basically, you can do aggro or mid range. Mid range has only gotten worse, right? Like the Monstro approach has only gotten worse, right? Like the approach to that was like, okay, can I out evasive them, right? And that's the access I was beating them on, not the combo access, right? And then green blue has this out control plan, which I still think is really good. It's just about being able to answer the other stuff. So we really just need to know what the number is. If it's going to be 40%, I'll sleeve up green blue. But I mean, dogs is really safe. I think dogs is a really safe choice as long as the majority of the room isn't purple steel or dogs. It ends up being a really great choice. I don't think you could go wrong with that. As long as the Blurple players aren't going in the direction of Wasabi. And I think if they dedicate themselves to Wasabi, they give up some percentage in the mirror match. So I think majority of those players are still going to dedicate themselves to beating the mirror. So yeah, I think my answer would be dogs right this second.
Sky, you're going to the CCQ. I mean, you don't have to tell everybody what you're playing, but how are you looking to attack the meta as it develops really early on here? Because, like I said, the past 3 metas have felt like, okay, Blurpole is, we're all just going to play Blurpole, and then we'll figure out everything around this, like the nucleus of the meta for the last like 3. So we're going in, we're feeling the same way. How are you planning to attack it or build your deck to beat a field like that?
I mean, there's upsides and downsides to having a deck that's like a huge like meta share. Like 35% is crazy. If it's anything near that, which I kind of think it's going to be, we're in that territory of like, okay, well, there's three directions we can take, and 3 different types of players can take these directions. One, we join the team and we just play Blurpole and hope to outplay the other Blurpole players. Maybe even you sneak in some tech so it's anti-Blurpole, which is typically what happens. But 2, you are stubborn and you say, I'm not playing this and I'm not going to beat it. I'm playing whatever, I'm still going to, it's not that bad, right? It's the copium answer, which is typically not the right answer. And then 3 is I'm hoping to hit this. And that's typically what I take. Like Zan said, I took Amber Steel when Blurpole was like that was the enemy, right? And if I can I'd rather like hit a day where I hit like weird math in my matchups and I don't hit it and just be like, well, darn, I guess it wasn't my day.
The Milwaukee
versus like,
run.
Yeah, versus like if you hit 4 dogs, but if you hit four Blurpole in a row, you can't really complain because that's just the math, right? So I'd rather build my deck and strategy around targeting that. So I'm still getting weird with it. There's some things with promise for what I'm brewing, but it's tough to typically the decks I think that are heaviest in brewing are like mid-range decks. And if Blurpole is shutting down the mid-range, like the brew factory is kind of suffering a little bit. So I'm still playing with some stuff, but green blue dogs are both, or even amber steel aggro are all solid answers to Blurpole. So I'd probably look into one of those.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the brewing that you have been doing. And I want to start with my favorite color combination, which I really haven't been playing all too much. I almost played it in Richmond. I played it in the Friday event and played Blurpole twice and Emerald Sapphire 3 times. And I was like, I can't do this to myself. It is Ruby Amethyst. And we have the Scrooge that you've been talking about here. We've got the Christopher Robin. You said you had this in your sealed pool as well, your draft pool.
Yes, this is just my draft deck and core, pretty much. I wish I could play Snowforts, but I can't.
Yeah, talk to us about it. Where do you see Ruby Amethyst? Do you think this is the direction the deck should be going?
I don't know. I haven't played just stock Ruby Amethyst. I know it's like a fine deck, but so I can't really comment too much if it feels better than the regular Ruby Amethyst. But this is definitely a fun engine that you have. The main thing about like card draw engines is how much tempo do you give up? And the thing I like about Scrooge is you don't really give up too much tempo. Like you play him on turn 3, you boost him once, he's a 4/4. He can hold up a board. So like this deck already like destroys aggro. That's a great thing to just check off the list. He also, like a lot of the removal that's going to remove a target that's as big as like a Scrooge, a 5/5, a 4/4 is going to be stuff like Let It Go, Hades, Into the Unknown. So like you kind of get a bonus benefit if they do have to remove him, which is just extra ink, which this deck can use pretty well. And then also if they don't and he lives, you can just bounce him with the Madame Mim Elephant's the preferred thing. We also have the Madame Medusa, which can bounce him to hand, and you get all those cards. So like that's, even if it's just boosted twice, you get the Scrooge back. That's like 3 cards. That's like a big amount of cards. So you like your ideal play is to do something like they quest with something, Scrooge takes it out, and then you like bounce him and get a bunch of cards, and you can replay down your hand. So there's a lot of low to the ground stuff because it's a Demona deck. It's also like a deck that wants to play behind on curve because you want to be boosting every turn. So like our punishment for doing that is like we play 1 like less ink thing per turn versus maxing out our ink and we have to boost. But I think it's honestly not too bad for a deck like red purple. And then you just play all the good cards. You play Demona, you play Elsa. Horseman's really important for the Genie Wars because we don't have too much stuff that can hit evasives. But we also have Madame Medusa, which can bounce the Scrooge as well on the cost of damaging one of our guys. But sometimes that can be good with Cheshire Cat. So I think the deck is not quite there. I've definitely gone the distance and beat Blurpole and grinded them out with like bouncing my Scrooge and Genie with 2 cards under it. But I don't necessarily think it's like going to beat it per se. So I don't know. Like try it out. I think it's a fun deck. It's definitely unexplored. This is not an optimized list, but I do have some faith in this type of deck.
Madame Medusa is really interesting to me because you can hit Scrooge and bounce Scrooge, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So like if you don't want the damage or you don't have a Cheshire Cat out or something, you can just hit your own Scrooge and bounce it, which is nice.
Yeah, or use her as an anti-aggro tool as well. Yeah, I mean, seems really interesting. Zan, have you taken a look at Ruby Amethyst at all here in the beginning of the set? What do you think of this list?
Yeah, I like this list a lot. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Scrooge. My biggest problem with red purple has been the purple steel argument. Basically,
Yeah.
when both of them go against each other, purple steel is able to use more of their cards efficiently. That's mainly has to do with strength, and so basically, I think that's still the question. I think the matchup has probably only gotten worse because of cards like Angel and Angel lining up so well against Horseman.
Yeah.
And so I think that the purple steel decks are leaning more into their card draw. And so if they're leaning more into their card draw, and I think that what I'm starting to notice is more and more angels being played. At first they started off at 2 and now they're at 3 and now they're at 4, and I'm like, okay, if that's the case, I don't like the direction it's headed for purple, uh for red purple. But is it possible in a specific meta that I end up sleeving up red purple? Yes, and that would be when I wanted to beat up on the aggro deck. Um, that's the thing. Like Blurple, I think you could take blindly into all of these situations, whereas red purple, I'm like, I need a specific meta where, like, let's say Frank Karsten wins with purple steel, not with purple steel, but with an who would need to win? It would need to be like a dogs player who won, and let's say Diego ends up winning ends up winning Melbourne. Then I'm like, okay, maybe I should think about playing red purple as opposed to any Blurple.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, Dogs has also, with Blurple, been one of those menaces ever since set 7 when all those dueling cards got introduced. And shout out to all the people that responded to the tweet that we put out today. We asked you to submit some deck lists for Sky and Zan to take a look at. We have 3 here. We got over 30, which is amazing. And we'd love to take a look at all of them, but we don't have infinite time. So Sky picked out 3 that he wanted to take a closer look at. The first is from a pretty well-known player on the ladder, out here grinding, trying to make a name for himself, and that is Royce, who has a Dogs deck here. And there was a lot of talk about Dogs just becoming infinitely better at the start of this set. I mean, there were just very obviously powerful cards with Grandmother Willow, Pudge coming into the game, some people liking Mulan. But here we have a Rockstar Stitch build. We talked about it a little bit in one of the previous episodes. We talked about the pros and cons to Rockstar Stitch versus not Rockstar Stitch. Zan, how do you feel about Royce's list here? Do you think this is close to a pretty optimized deck, at least early on, for what we'd expect to see out of Dogs? Still on Chromacon, still on the Under the Sea, adding in a couple new tools here from the most recent set and some old ones.
I'm trying to count how many uninkables there are. I think I'm seeing 12, 14, 16, 19, 21. I think it's too many uninkables. I think I had a hard rule at 19 uninkables for Dogs. So that's the first place I would start, is like, I think we gotta trim 2 uninkables. That's the number 1 rule. Number 2 is, I feel like Pluto leans you too heavily into trying to go the Stitch direction, and I think that the world for Plutos and Pluto plus Willow gets kind of dangerous. But I do think that the combo version is probably the best version for the mirror match. Um, yeah, I do think that the Stitch is really good in the mirror match, and it can negate the Under the Sea version. And it's possible that maybe people should be playing some copies of the 1-cost Rhino, just so you can potentially bring the Stitch down, and on that like combo turn, right, when you're going off with the Stitch, and then you go like Under the Sea at the end of that. whole situation uh, to beat your opponent. Yeah, uninkable count is the number one thing I don't like. I do like the Stitch, but I don't think the focus of your deck should be all in on Stitch. I think there needs to be a little bit more ladies. I'm a big lady fan. I think it's the most skill intensive card and gives you the most game against everything, and it's only gotten better with the Willows.
Yeah, you're talking about the shift lady specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miss Park Avenue. That's a really really cool card. I saw Ghosty do something absolutely cracked during one of the ICL matches. He challenged in with his tramp to just remove it, so he could play the lady, get it back to his hand, buff something, and then challenge in again. Like the utility of the card can be really 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 expansive, and it can be hard to see some of those lines. So I completely agree on the skill level that it takes to play that card most optimally. Sky, what did you see out of the list here from Royce, and do you think this is the direction to go with dogs? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I picked all three of these decks because I think not necessarily the lists are interesting themselves, but just the concept of the deck this set is pretty interesting. This list, I think, wins a little bit in every avenue of what Dogs does. You have the Stitch package, you have Under the Sea, you have Chromacon still, and you still have Lady. I don't necessarily think that's the right way to go. I think it's just an interesting conversation piece of which way do you think is the best in this meta.
Okay, sure.
I don't necessarily mind the Pluto. I do think you need to drop some uninkables, but I'd probably just drop the Chromacons entirely if we're going for this Stitch game plan. But I do like the aspect of Pluto and certain curves where if you're all in on Stitch, you can go like Pluto on 1, Willow on 2 plus 1 cost Stitch, and then next turn shift and still have ink to play something and start off a curve. So like say we were playing the 1 cost Lilo, the dream would be play the Lilo trigger, play a Podge trigger, and get 2 triggers immediately. But I don't think playing like a turn 3 Stitch shift and hitting 2 triggers is going to be like frequent enough to play for that. So but it does represent something important of like we need to get value off the Stitch right away, and that can help us do a little bit more. Other than that, I think like Stitch could be the way to play this. I haven't tested it myself, so it's really tough to know where these board states line up and like what you gain by playing the Stitch package over just like super aggressive dogs, maybe play like the Mulan. But I do think there's probably some potential for comboing off with Stitch winning versus like the mirror / aggro. And maybe that's enough percentage points to make it worth versus just going straight aggro into like a Mulan and finish the game super fast. Because I do think the games where you combo off, you're probably still beating the decks that just super aggro starts would. It's just how frequently and consistently can we combo off with the Stitch is like the question, right? So I like this list. I think if I were to build like dogs, I think I would at least start with like just Stitch. I'd probably just drop the Chromacons because I think by the time you combo off, you're don't really need the Chromacon to bounce stuff. Your probably board is just should be wide enough if you set it up right to just win the game.
Yeah, and that would be like, primarily against decks that aren't the mirror, obviously. Decks that are trying to challenge into you and remove your stuff. That makes sense to me. Zan, I've been a big fan, of this Mulan card since it was revealed. Yeah. I've talked about it. No one is playing it. Have you given Mulan a chance? Is it not reliable enough? Or do you just not need it? I guess is the question at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I actually made my decision on it yesterday.
Okay.
In terms of after all the testing, basically I've landed Mulan does not belong in the deck. Mm-hmm. Just because if you think about the way the deck plays, it's not an aggro deck, and that plan is unnecessary. And so, like when we look at this deck, when we see a bunch of like 2-ofs, basically what the person is saying indirectly to you is that they just want that card to be there just because it makes them feel safe, but they actually haven't made a decision on what the focus of the deck is, right? And so oftentimes those 1 or 2 slots, I really think that dogs at the end ends up being like 4 besides like the Chromacon and the Under the Sea type cards. And Mulan is one of them that I was just stuck 4 of no matter what. And I was like, I'm determined to make this work. And at the end, I realized, oh, this card was the liability every single time. It's just gotta go.
Yeah.
talking about Chromacon, it just keeps becoming more and more important because it's the biggest punish for Blurple and for red purple. So if those two decks exist in the match in the universe, then I think that you want to try to make those work. Now, talking about Stitch, the best matchup it has is actually the mirror match. So then you're like, okay, if I can incorporate these three, I can feel solid about 3 out of the 4 matchups I care about. Purple Steel is the fourth one, and that one is going to be really heavily geared towards how many Calhouns they play. The more Calhouns they cut, the higher chance you have of winning, and the better Chromacon becomes. And so I feel like they're headed in a direction where they end up going down to 2 and potentially less, just because it's not a great card against Blurple. And if they're headed in that direction, I think the most important card in the entirety of the whole deck is Chromacon, because the first build that I really focused on was, let's cut the Chromacon, let's try to play this deck in a certain direction. All these other planned directions, the Lilo and Stitch and the Lady, let's stick it all in and see what happens. With the Mulan situation, I found the best build for that was like a Fort build, but you have just a bunch of bad characters with Fort. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. But I did feel like that was the best version of it because it had the highest chance of you untapping with Mulan, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can potentially get a quest for 2 or 3 into a quest for 6, that ends up being your best shot.
Yeah, all the Mulan fans out there, I know I'm leading the charge. Zan's not saying never, okay? He's saying not right now. That's what I'm hearing.
That card has an inevitability to it. I think that there's a point at which we're gonna look at that card and be like, "Oh, this is annoying," but it really fits the play style of green steel as opposed to dogs.
Yeah, I mean, you're one of the most well-known Emerald Steel players in the world. Obviously, it's kind of fallen out entirely since it lost Diablo and all the ability to discard and just be like the best mid-range deck to ever mid-range. Do you see a world where it comes back? Like, is it this meta? Is it the next one? Like, does it need a few more tools? Have you tried it?
Yeah, I dabble in it from time to time, and so many people send me lists that eventually I cave. I'm like, I'll try it and I'll play a
Sure.
little bit of it, and I'll be like, okay, this is terrible. The way I feel about it is it's stripped out of its identity, right? The creators of the game, the designers of the game said that they're not going to bring back the discard situation, right? So it needs to find a new identity. I don't think it will ever come back the way it once was on the axis that it preyed on. The new one, whichever the new version is going to be, is gonna look completely different. We just haven't been able to find one that was that was better than something else that existed. I felt like Green Steel, when it existed in set 9, was just the worst dogs deck, just an easier dogs deck to play. So if it needs to cave out its own identity, and that's going to take a lot of various card printings. I don't I can't predict the future, but if it exists, I'll find it.
Yeah. Speaking of decks that have sort of lost their identity entirely, Sapphire Steel. You both well-known Sapphire Steel players, of course. Zan, you were really big on the Oswald when all of the craziness was printed with the Tamatoas and everything like that. Sky has been a Sapphire Steel champion for a long, long time, but something I respect a lot from both of you is you're not completely entirely tied to a certain deck. You play everything. You play what's best. You play what's best into the format. And we have a Sapphire Steel list here from a local player of mine that Sky picked out here, and it's always interesting the Sapphire Steel deck after the rotation, and really after the bans, it's sort of lost what it was best at, and now it's trying to form a new identity of this sort of like mid-range control-ish deck with direct damage instead of just removing things on the spot like Blurpole can do. I guess it can do it as well, but we have no Let It Goes here. Obviously, it can't play Into the Unknown. It's doing more direct damage with Strength of Raging Fire, Thunderbolt, Tinkerbell, Ariel, Vincenzo, Angel, etc., etc., etc. Sky, how do you feel about Sapphire Steel in this set? I know a lot of people really want it to work. They want it to be good. It's their favorite color combination. And I feel for those people as a Ruby Amethyst fan, I want my favorite deck to be good. But it's got a lot of new tools here. Pete seems insane. Angel seems insane. Talk to us, Sky.
Yeah, I think Pete and Angel both being ally gives a lot of like potential for like the allies build with the Shift Jasmine to be good. The main thing about this deck is does it beat Blurpole, and like what can you do for that matchup? And I think there's some things you can kind of play towards to make that matchup a little bit less bad. Stuff like shifting Jasmine, like it's kind of like they can't hard remove that because they're gonna ramp you too much. Pete's also another way where you can set up a threat with a boost under it and it could ramp you again. And I think this deck does have the potential to kind of make use of that extra ink. So some of the hardest removal that Blurple has that's typically really punishing can be turned into something that's not super bad. Um, Traditionally, I think last set I ended with Blue Steel thoughts on Ariel is like the way to go. Like playing Cindy into Ariel and then playing like another princess plus singing a song in Triggering was like the most value I could generate with the deck and like put me in a spot where it beat like Purple Steel, beat aggro decks because you removed enough stuff, at least on the play. But I think this set, like Ariel doesn't do anything for you with Blurple. Like they have too much hard removal, and that's one where it's just like too free to just remove it. And you've like kind of played around that package. It did trigger Cinderella and give you extra ink, but you'd rather have stuff that's just like when it comes in, it does something. I think having Angel with this deck is fantastic because it gives a way for this deck to not just fold to aggro. You can play for a turn 3 like Angel every game, just hard send everything for Angel plus a 2-cost ramp and just hope you hit it. And that can actually like keep you in some games. You can just like stall for a turn and then like eventually get to a Tinkerbell, and sometimes that's enough to lock it out. I am interested to see if people end up playing strength in this deck. I do think this is a deck that might not want to play strength, as it's just like you don't have too many singers of it. I guess with the shift package you have a little bit extra, but it's really hard to kind of deploy enough characters and at least the non-ally build of Blue Steel. So I think it's probably correct to cut it from that. Maybe this build has more play with stuff like Captain Hook and Jasmine and a little bit of Lexington, but I found myself like really struggling to play strength and for relevant numbers, and I was just like, well, I just want to ink it. It was always just I wanted Thunderbolt for Cindy to sing for 4. So I don't know. I think Blue Steel is interesting. I think there's some stuff to be done with it. I'm curious to see where people land, if it's the Jasmine shift stuff or if it's just the 2-4-6 that I know a lot of people like to play. I'm also curious to see if Beyond the Horizon, I know this person decided to include 2, if that's card is a card that can stick. I've traditionally been like a big hater of this card because of how clunky it can be at times, especially with stuff like Goliath. But I don't know. I think I'd probably favor Doc, especially in a build that has Jasmine, because Doc is an ally. But I think it's a solid like point to start with like an ally build. It is curious to see that they chose not to max out the Jasmine as well.
They did give me an explanation for that if you want to hear it. But
yeah, let it rip. I'm curious about that.
It's a long explanation, but let me get to it here. I do think that Sapphire Steel is interesting because it's a deck I've played against a lot, and it's always a deck that I've wanted to dabble into, but never really gotten into it. Anyway, here's the synopsis. Ramp on 2 chance without playing 1 jump ahead or develop is 89.8%, so we're getting into numbers here. Jasmine on 1, then shift on 2 if keeping one of the copies in your opening altar is around 52.6%, depending on which copy of Jasmine you keep. The chances of either hitting ramp on 2 or shift line on 2 combined comes out to 95.17. So that is their reasoning there.
Okay. I do like the math to back it up. My response would be that you're kind of building your deck around this card, though. Like you're putting in allies and maxing out counts of allies that you probably wouldn't. Stuff like Lexington that's not super great to play it. So like I'd probably want to like if I'm like mulliganing and like looking for certain lines, and I think strengthening as like keeping a 4/4 line would make me feel more confident with the deck, I guess. I do think there's also interesting lines with Shift Jasmine and Zeus Thunderbolt to come back versus aggro that's like kind of important, but I like the like never missing ramp aspect of just throwing this in, because maybe this person thinks the just 2-4-6 is much stronger into most of the field, and it's just like a little splash of inkable stuff to make the missing ramp like not as punishing. Because missing ramp with this deck is the worst. Like if you ever play this deck, my gosh, like Green Blue could get by last set without doing it. I think Blurpole has a little bit more recovery as well, but this deck is like, my gosh, for doing nothing.
Yeah. Zan, do you think Sapphire Steel has a place in the upcoming meta? Do you think it's something like this, or do you think it needs to evolve? It's just like you mentioned, both of you. Is it beating Blurpole? And I just don't see a world where it consistently is able to do that.
I mean, I think it has a path. So I've been traditionally a big fan of the allies build, the Jasmine build. I definitely agree with Sky. I definitely think it should be the four Jasmine, just because I love having access to that shift line into Zeus. Yeah, and if you're building your whole deck around that whole situation, like you need the docks. Like that's the thing that's gonna let you keep going and going and going. And you have ways to get rid of the extra ones now in Cinderella and Angel. So originally I thought that the best build of the deck was going to be allies again. This time I feel like it's Cinderella. And it's not because I think that not Cinderella, Ariel. I just think that the song package is the best way, and the best approach is the 2-4-6. I also think that develop your brain is really important because this deck is so reliant on going 2-4-6. So then we go like develop, Sail, Cinderella, Goliath, or Ariel, depending on which deck that you're playing against. But usually it's going to be Ariel first, and then you follow up with the Goliath, and you just try to jam as many Ariels as you can, even though they have a lot of removal for them. Basically, um, in that version, I think that the 7 cost song has become more and more important because we can potentially just get rid of, like, randomize their hand. It's just one of the ways that I think that you're gonna get back into the game. The reason why I think that the aerial version is so much more clear is because you should be playing Let It Go yourself, and that's access to another song. And the strengths aren't great. I agree with Sky, but I think Ariel is the most powerful card that we can have access to. And so if you could set up a turn to like get rid of their stuff or play Goliath and force them to ink the stuff that would get rid of your Ariel, and you jam the Ariel after that. Yeah, I just feel like I feel like you can just steal the game that way. Because if in 2 cards or 3 cards they don't find the answer to it, you just wipe their board and it's now too late. It's like a narrow window, but it's a narrow window that I feel like it's actually replicable, as opposed to the past where we didn't have enough density of good songs. But Let It Go is that good. I think it's that good of a song. Like while it's being accompanied by the 7 cost song that draws you 3 cards, Strength, and Zeus.
Yeah. Sky, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on Sapphire Steel and Let It Go in the deck specifically?
I was playing for Let It Go in any version. I think this deck loves to sing with it. I think like with the Ariel, like if you think about what it does, Ariel like already wants to sing something because hitting for 3 is typically not super great. You don't care about questing, so like having a higher cost song that she can sing and then trigger taking out their biggest thing plus like a 1 or 2 cost is really good. Yeah, I think I'm still not sold on Beyond the Horizon, even in a version with like Ariel. And like the versions with Ariel, when I was playing for Ariel, with like you play 4 Let It Go, 4 Strength, and 4 Zeus. Like Strength was good then. I just found myself like, man, I really want to cut it, and so I like tried the versions without Ariel. I don't know. I think like the final closing thoughts is I named the deck 73% win rate because if you play 4 develop, it's like around a 73% chance based on to hit Cinderella on turn 3. And it's like that's the most important thing. Like we have Bell, which is an interesting thing that I've been trying out. At first I was like, that Bell card, the 4 cost, is like terrible. It's just a 2/3 quest for 2. But if they remove it, you get a ramp with it, because it ramps itself. So like you do get to always like skip to like 6, and like that's super important for this deck. So it's almost like playing a Kita that has ward, because you're going to get the value, except you can sometimes get it immediately. And that's actually like a really important part. So like being able to just play like 2 bells and make sure you don't ever miss like the 4 cost turn 3 play is like super important. Even if it's the bell and it's a little bit less worse, there are things we can play. We can play a Pete next turn for 5, or play an Angel plus, discard something. It's not the worst. So I think Blue Steel is definitely better than last set, and I do think there are versions that are 4 aerial and just max out in songs, and it's not bad. And I do think there are versions where it's like none of that, maybe plays allies and just go for like crazy turns with like 10 ink where you play 3 things and try to win that way.
So one of the traps that I really like in this deck now is, let's just assume that we always go 2, 4, 6, right? On the 6, we have Goliath and Ariel, but having Pete is like such a great trap. Is right, like if your Blurpole player goes let it go on that Pete, you have all the ink that you could possibly need, and now every 7 drop you play is threatening to discard their hand, because they're always just like, if they don't have their perfect hand, if we actually give them randomness, I really do think it favors Blue Steel when we enter the random territory.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. I think Pete, and honestly, my opinion, is the only deck this deck is like the only deck that should be running Pete. Maybe the Amber Sapphire too, but I don't believe in that deck a whole lot. I don't think Pete belongs in Blurpole there.
What? I totally would have guessed that would be your style. It's like, feels, it feels in between Blue Steel and Green Blue. Like,
if it's good, I'd be fine with playing it. But when I see a Black Cauldron, that's what I'm out. I see Great Stone Dragon all over again.
What?
Yeah, we could just go to the next one. One final thing is, I think Ink Printer is important to include in this. I think a 1 or 2 of is a pretty good thing. Maybe with Let It Go, you don't need it as much, but I do like to see it. And I also think Moana is a pretty good tactic. Like, if you are playing for Ariel, I think you can play Cindy, Ariel, Moana, get value there, retrigger, and sing a song, pay 2 to take out 2 things, and like that's on the play gonna probably beat everything. So I think Moana is a valid inclusion to keep your draw up
for Sapphire Steel specifically.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
I think for both decks, but
yeah. Here we have the Amber Sapphire. You guys were calling it Blello, I believe, on the Club Lorcana, and then
only me.
The streets are saying
range bait for Jeremy.
The streets are saying Blamber might also be a way to go, but this is from Machiavelli. He's also a grinder out there, but this is a deck that everyone was like, okay, it's arrived, it's here, and then it was like, it feels like it just, all that hype has completely gone away, and just nobody is really scared of this deck. Nobody's really talking about it. It's all, let's talk about Blurpole. Let's talk about all these other decks that they're just better, it feels like. But I don't know. How do you guys feel about it, Zan? Do you think that Amber Sapphire is like real, or are the pieces not lining up right now?
I think there's 2 different camps, right? I think there's like more our camp in the sense that we're so tapped into what's going on, and then there's another camp that is gonna wait a bit longer to see if this deck survives. Basically based off of the numbers, just because I have like a deck list on Dreamborn and a couple of YouTube videos centered around this deck, the numbers just keep going up. So people are I think
they want it to work.
All the decks, it is getting the most press, like the most clicks, even today, right? After some time. So there are a lot of believers. I think that the deck has a lot more work that we can do to make it better, just because it's never been worked on. Right? So a part of me still thinks that, I think that it's going to win some tournaments. Do I think that it's going to do it consistently? No, I think it's going to just raging storm its way, just because people have forgotten how to play around and be prepared into some victories. And it's going to get some more believers before people are going to fully denounce it.
Yeah, this is interesting, because you look at the number of characters that are in it. We have, what is this, 7? So like, for low to the ground aggro decks that just want to beat up on this, we're playing Mowgli's, we're playing Ursula's. Like, your entire hand's going to get ripped apart before you can really do anything, and you're not stopping the aggression quickly enough. I like, is Spooky Sight enough to get you past that matchup, Sky, or is this just full punt if you play against aggro? You have no chance?
I think it's very dependent. I think there
Okay.
are certain hands and situations where you can play a spooky site after a Cinderella, and you're like can set yourself up to win if you like find a Raging Storm after that. But like you said, like a lot of the aggro decks are playing Mowgli and Ursula, and like your whole hand is going to be kind of ripped to shreds. Even if you keep the spooky site, like playing a spooky site and wiping their board is typically not just going to win you the game. It's they're if they're smart, they're going to say, okay, they have to play spooky site here because I have 3-4 characters on board. I'm not going to full commit my hand, or I'm going to play something that's like good into that the turn before, and they're just going to like redeploy, and like you need to like wipe again and then like start combating. So I think my problem with this deck is that one, yeah, it's tough against aggro. I think this deck does not play great aggro answers. I think if you look at blue steel, spooky site is not angel. Angel is like an insane way to actually swing the aggro matchup. It can steal you a bunch of games, and it's inkable. Spooky site does not do that. Two, I think this draw engine is just not there. Like if you look at the draw engines in this game and you look at Black Cauldron, like I have such a hard time believing that Black Cauldron is ever like tempo enough to compete with stuff like Demona, with stuff like Doc. Even like post rotation when our draw engines aren't as strong as they used to be, I still think this card is just way too slow, like to start generating value with. It is like can be oppressive if you have like Hades and like you Raging Stormed your Hades or something their board, and then you can bring it back, and it's like yeah, that's pretty good because they get one guaranteed, but like oftentimes one guaranteed removal is not enough at all. So I don't know. I think this deck is going to inevitably be strong when there are tools that aren't Black Cauldron to draw cards. But I don't see Raging Storm on its own being good enough. Now, the good things about this deck that I see are I love Moana. I think Cindian's Moana is like a sick draw engine that's like crazy and exactly what these colors want to be doing. I think Surfer Stitch is kind of cool, but at the same time, like if we're playing Ohanamin's Family and Surfer Stitch, these are two cards that I don't really believe in anything else other than this. So does that just mean we're playing a worse deck? Maybe. Like that's probably the end of the line there.
I would like to ask you, Sky, if you wouldn't mind just explaining to the listeners and the people that are watching why Cinderella and Moana is a quote unquote draw engine, because I mean Moana doesn't say draw cards, right? But it is a draw engine in a way. And for the people that haven't seen the previous episodes that you explained it in, would you mind just going over it one more time?
Yeah, a deck like this that plays Develop Your Brain, plays Sail, plays Vision, is typically not going to have any problem with having cards in the discard. So you can almost treat this as like you're always going to have a trigger to trigger Moana with. Cinderella herself, like is like a value engine because it ramps you, which is good, and it replaces itself, which is good. So it's kind of like drawing a card. And then Moana re-triggers Cinderella. Cinderella is a pretty sticky thing that they're typically not going to deal with unless it's like a steel deck, and you're probably want to be playing steel decks with this deck. So you're going to re-trigger Cinderella. You get that ink and replacement again. And then Moana herself, you get an ink from the discard. So like you're saving like cards instead of having to ink from hand with these two cards. And that's really, really strong within its own right. Like if you're like ramping with these cards and saving ink from your hand, that's essentially the same as drawing, right? If you're inking 90% of the turns of throughout every Lorcana game you play, you could pretty much read it as draw a card. You just don't get to like look at your other strong card, which is the one downside. But yeah, I think you definitely, if we didn't have an engine like this deck would just struggle so much with drawing, because cards like Stitch do draw two cards. Black Cauldron can recur value and get cards back, but like that is like one, Stitch is conditional, and Black Cauldron is just really slow. So we need stuff like this to ramp and keep our hand full for any sort of strategy like this to work.
Zan, what do you think of the Black Cauldron?
Okay. So I think of the Black Cauldron as a better Merlin's Carpetbag in this deck. I do think that it's the best way to, way to take advantage of that extra ink. So, the way I think about Moana and Cinderella is a little bit different. I think about it as it's a draw a card until you get 8 ink, and after when you get 8 ink, it's like half of a card, because you can't really take advantage of it unless you have a specific card that takes advantage of it. One of the only cards that in this strategy that does that is Black Cauldron, right? Because it since you're like putting characters underneath, you can have this like one turn where you just play everything all at once, and having like all that extra ink allows you to play 14 is really big because double Hades is really huge, or Hades and a Stitch is really huge. I think the other aspect of this deck, yes, the draw engine is definitely messed up. So how can we improve that? So one of the things that we just shot 2 videos and with like an updated version, and the way I felt like you can improve it is by playing Lilo, the 2 costs that you can bring back from your discard, right? Because remember, after when you get past 8, how do we convert that extra ink into real card advantage? It's by keep bringing back those Lilos. Number 2 is add a what is it called, 8 cost Donald Duck. I feel like the 8 cost Donald Duck gives you extra copies of Stitch. Obviously, not as good as Stitch, but it's the same body. So it's also attracting that same play pattern of Ohana means family. So, like, the draw engine is so complicated in this deck to make work. We're closer to 2, what do you call it? Black Cauldrons than we are to 1 Black Cauldron. And the matchup between Blurpole and this is actually much closer than we think. The way I would build the deck is I would give up on the Blurpole, not the Blurpole matchup, the Dogs matchup, and I would focus on this deck being the Amethyst killer deck. And once you make that deck into just an Amethyst killer deck, it is very likely that we're going to see big tournaments in this set being like 70% Amethyst. And you can have a run of a tournament all the way to a top cut of a DLC by not playing anything but Amethyst.
Yeah.
And so I think that the deck is not going anywhere. It's honestly in a very similar position to Green Blue was at the beginning of the set. Probably slightly worse just because there's been less time for it to develop. But like right, it feels around the same power level.
And just sorry, Sky, you're talking about the Donald Duck coin collector, right?
Yeah, because if you think about set 9, the green blue deck, it didn't have a proper draw engine, right? So the thing that was being discovered, this was like CCS, the one that Tiago ended up winning, but Jeremy ended up making top 4 of that one. Figuring out the draw engine for the deck was the complicated thing, right? It was like the 4 cost Donald Duck with Clarabelle's and the four cost Song. That was all being discovered during that time. And so once it was figured out, the deck then ended up getting good results. And then once it got a better, like, its own like one-sided board wipe. Then it hit the next level, and then we saw you guys dominate with it in Richmond. So I think that we're like in that in-between phase for the deck right now. But since it has a proper board wipe, that it could get that result earlier than later.
Yeah, I think you bring up some interesting points. I think saying that, I think I definitely agree with you should just give up the aggro matchups. Like typically when there's like a clunky uninkable that like can maybe save you versus a aggro matchup, it's not worth it to run in spooky sites, like the definition of that. So I think you can still easily lose with like maxed out spooky sites. So I think we for sure need to drop that, especially if aggro is not a super big meta share. I do see the path where this deck beats Blurple and like all the other decks pretty much, other than maybe like a few decks if you tune it towards that. But I feel like green blue is also that, just exactly that deck currently. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on green blue versus this deck? Which deck do you think has the most is favorite, I guess?
I mean, I think that Mowgli really lines up well in this deck, and the fact that you can loop the Mowgli over and over again creates a really difficult situation for green blue. And so I think that Amber with Sapphire, we just haven't seen it together, and you can really make this deck problematic for very specific decks. It just has like more narrow tools, right? The fact that we can play Ludwig, and I'm no longer even playing Ludwig. If I needed it, I could put it back into the deck. But I think Mowgli is just better in this deck. Just because I just think that looping it with what do you call it, Cauldron, has just been absolutely phenomenal. So for a deck like Green Blue, I think it can put it on the back foot. But I think Green Blue is still a great deck. I just think we just have to pick it for the right weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that, because when Cauldron first came out with Mowgli, me and Katie had a joke about we're gonna build a Mowgli Cauldron deck where we just keep spewing out the Mowglis over and over again to rip apart a hand. So another interesting thing you talked about was the two cost Lilo, and I think I was like, I haven't even played Amber Sapphire at all, but I was like, what about two cost Lilo? We bring it back. It's a way that we can activate Surfer Stitch after a wipe like much easier. Like, I'm glad you said that, because I actually think that that might be like the best thing this deck has to like help with Surfer Stitch, because I think it is. If you look at the character count, it's kind of tough to activate Surfer Stitch after a board wipe, and that's like when you need him most, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you play it before and take two, and then you like threaten, okay, this is my board. You have to like respect it, and then I can wipe if I want to. But a lot of times you want to play one Surfer Stitch after a wipe, and like we have four one costs and then four T-pos. That's not looking too appetizing to play after a board wipe. So something like the Lilo, I feel like is like pretty cool to play. The only thing was like, when do you play it? Like, do you want to play it like before the wipe and like have it hit or like your own wipe hits it and get it in the discard, or like when have you found a spot to play the card? Because there's no way to really discard cards with this deck.
Um, it's interesting. It that honestly came up. It totally depended on who I was playing against and what I was trying to get them to do. It's a good way to incentivize someone to play more stuff to the board and wipe them, like walk them into the board wipe. That always feels really, really good. It honestly depends on at which point you're at, right? There's some games where you end up getting the ink engine going early and you have abundance of ink, and then there are games where you don't have that and you have to keep it in your hand as a insurance policy to continue inking to get to the magical numbers, right? Like you want the magical number of like, you know, like the difference between 14 and 15 is so massive because you're like thinking, oh, I need to be able to double Hades on this turn, right? As or like Hades plus Hades plus Moana plus Mowgli or something, you know, like you're just trying to think of as you're trying to unlock as many chains as possible. And so usually at that point in the game, you're like thinking, is this better as ink or not, right? And so it totally depends from game to game. But I really do like, if I can choose to do which one, it's the one walking them into a bigger and better board wipe.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also to go along with that, I have a question about, do you think this is a deck that like kind of plays a control game and wipes the board and then puts on a clock, or do you think it's once you've established control, it just doesn't matter what your clock is? Because I feel like Lilo, a big part of that card is it has two lures, so like maybe this deck needs to put on a clock immediately after a wipe, and then it wins with that rather than just establishing complete control like Green Blue does.
Yeah. So what I noticed with this deck is you wipe the board, and then the next, what you're trying to do is you're trying to play a cauldron, and the moment you play the cauldron is the next turn. Like you're saying, like, hey, either you make your clock fast enough, or this cauldron is going to eat you alive, and then you're gonna wipe the board, put a card underneath, and you try to create an army under your cauldron, and then you wipe the board. The next turn, you go play three dudes, and then they're like, I have to respond to that, right? And your three dudes wants to like include a Hades in it, right? And if you're including a Hades in it, then you're winning the race. So that always feels good. Let's say you don't have enough. Let's say you don't have enough gas, right? Like in underneath your cauldron, then you're just trying to put a Hades out, and you're just trying to bring those Lilos back. So the magical number for that is like usually 11 or 12, right? Depending on if you're activating cauldron or not. And so yeah, basically this I've noticed that it does an increment of like 6. So even if you're able to get like 2 lore, then the way you're going to gain lore after that is probably going to be uh 8, 14, 20. and
Sure.
and that usually has to do with like, you know, a Lilo here and there, a Hades, and a Stitch, and then them interacting back with you.
Cool. Makes sense. I think some decks are like very obvious, like, okay, I want this deck to take control and I don't care about my clock at all. But I think this deck, it kind of like dances the line of, okay, we do one wipe and we kind of just start to play a mid-range game plan then, and like establishing your own value on your board is like pretty important.
Yeah, what honestly makes Cauldron broken is the fact that it should have probably said like if this character dies a second time, then it goes into your inkwell or something like that.
Yeah, if they deal with your character and then like a non-Hades or let it go, like you have to deal with it next turn.
Exactly. So yesterday, what did we do? We did Monstro combo versus this deck, and honestly, it's a terrible matchup for blue yellow. But because Nathan kept playing Great Illuminary, and that was like putting me in a really rough spot because I don't have any characters with rush, right? So, but there's not that many Amethyst decks that play locations in the first place. So I ended up having to play 7 Hades in order to win, and that was like extremely it was just extremely difficult, and I think I won the game at 8, Nathan being at 18 or 19. But yeah, basically I just think that Black Cauldron against any deck that's not playing the thing is, even though Blurpole has so many of these things, and you envision like Hades, all their Hades and all their Let It Goes and all their Into the Unknowns lining up with all your stuff, you just get to play the game in a different way where you're like, okay, now I'm gonna do this play where I'm gonna play a Hades, I'm gonna play I'm gonna play a Hades, and I'm going to immediately, like, if they don't deal with it this turn, I'm going to be able to board wipe it the next turn and put it under the cauldron immediately, and that's just gonna come up more and more often, because you're gonna set it up.
I do think the Cauldron like is the way to build the deck. I just am very hesitant on cards that, like, one, you have to tap it and then put the character under, and like you get nothing that turn, right? You're setting up for next turn, which is fine, but then you get the value and then you have to wait another turn, and then like, it's like you can get value every other turn, which I think is worth. I mean, sometimes just taking back 1 Hades is enough to win a game, and you can't always take the math of, okay, well, if you quest out and you're putting on the pressure, I can always swing in and bring something back immediately with the Cauldron, which is pretty potent. But my main concern, I guess, after all that is that if this deck is ever played like at a decent amount, we have an abundance of item removal that people are very happy to include. So I think if you start planning with this card around, they play like a Benja or a Pluto or something, it's like very, very sad. And I think green blue, if they didn't have You're Welcome, maybe this matchup would be favored for Amber Sapphire, but You're Welcome being able to hit this is like, I think, pretty crushing for the matchup.
I think DKP posted a list today that had 3 cauldrons in them in the deck.
3 cauldron.
3 cauldrons, and then I think 3 copies of the 5/5 that has ward.
Okay.
Right?
Scuttle?
Yeah,
Scuttle.
Because it's always going to die, and then you're always gonna be able to bring it back.
The immortal Scuttle build. I like
exactly. So
cannot Hades this.
So I think that, like, DKP is the person who has to have the most experience with Merlin's Carpetbag, right? And this deck is most close to that blue red deck, right? And so, like, his version of blue red, right? The non-item Maui Shark build, right? So I think that, like, I think I love that idea, right? And I think he's growing that idea, and I'm like, okay, I see where he's headed, and I was already at 2 copies of it. If you get to 3 copies, there's no way you can play enough item removal where it doesn't harm you so much. Like, you're just gonna be like, are you really trying to deal with blue yellow at this point?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is that item removal is always inkable. So like, if the deck ever does pop off, it's like, yeah, we'll throw 4 Benja in, and like people always want to do it. Like, I always see that Pluto and that Benja, I'm like, man, this card is so bad, but like, whatever, it's inkable. We'll let them have it.
That's because it feels so good.
I mean, it does. Like for sure. Like when you take out their Cauldron, that's like what they've played.
Crack a Chromacon, crack a Cauldron, man. It doesn't matter. Whatever you hit with your item removal, it's just like there's no better feeling.
Yeah, it does. It also does punish the guidebook, which is very played right now. So
that is sick.
Yeah, have to be a lot of items, I think, consistently in the best decks for it to ever be viable, because it's been very like close, like teching in that kind of stuff, and not having a sideboard in Disney Lorcana, like the inkable, uninkable cards being the sideboard is always an interesting discussion. But I wanted to, unless you have any other final words on Amber Sapphire, talk about Skies. He promised it because it was asked last week by by our fans in the Spilled Ink section. They specifically asked Sky to build a Ruby Steel deck, and this is another one. It's more of a sad story, compared to like the people that are Ruby Amethyst players or Sapphire Steel players who had their time in the sun as some of the tier 1 decks. This deck has never even sniffed like tier 5. It's always the worst. This and like Ruby Emerald
until
like
now,
the two worst decks.
The day.
Until now. Drumroll please, revealing Light the Fuse deck. It's Sky, you talk about it. I'm not going to explain your deck.
Yeah, I'm excited to yap about this deck because I think it gives some good lessons, and it's a nice thought experiment about how to build decks and like what you should be looking for. So back when I played Amber Steel Aggro and I won the CCQ, I realized how insane the card Strength Raging Fire is with 1 cost. So like you can typically go super wide and you play 1 strength, take out their biggest guy, and your board's just running away with the game. Doesn't even matter really what you have on board, as long as it quests for at least 1. Like that can typically just win games. So I read the card Light the Fuse and I was like, wait a minute, this card's insane. It can kind of take that role of I remove 1 big thing and my board runs away with the game. And we can run Strength of Raging Fire. So like the games where we go second, we need 2 removals. We can find, a strength and a Light the Fuse. So that's the idea behind the deck, and everything is built around that. So we play 12 1 costs that are pretty beefy. The idea behind the 1 cost here is like, we want to incentivize, if they do go ahead and hit something, it's going to hit back, right? It's going to at least trade with a 2 cost or typically, a 1 or 2 if they do hit something, because our 2 costs incentivize hitting other things, right? We have Lilo, which is a really sick card that like enables them to, or makes them hit 2 things in to take it out, or Nala is typically the same unless it's something for 3. It really goes along with the game plan of, okay, if I'm taking out your biggest thing, it's going to be hard for you to hit 2 things into the Lilo and take it out, or hit 2 things into the Nala to take it out. So they're going to have to go for a 1 cost, which is a nice thing. The 2 cost slot, we have Diablo, which is just a fantastic 2 quester that also kind of goes along the philosophy of, okay, if you can't hit our Lilo or hit our Nala, you're going to at least trade in at quest for 2, which is nice. The idea of this deck is just to like essentially go wide and then try to take out 1 or 2 things with strength and Light the Fuse. You play 3 singers, which are typically not traditional cards you'd see in like an aggro deck. Like I think if you look at any of these cards except mine, maybe John Silver, like this doesn't really fit an aggro playstyle. But Red Steel's strength is not, we have a bunch of efficient things that quest for a lot. We really have to like say, I'm going to dominate the board with 2, like with removal, and then like quest out with our little guys, because all of our stuff doesn't quest for a whole lot except like Nala and Lilo. But yeah, so John Silver's nice because it stops them from attacking with 1 thing. So we play a Light the Fuse, take out a thing. We play a John Silver. They're the only remaining thing can't attack, and we quest out like where our board is safe for like a full turn, like mission accomplished. Pete is like an integral part versus like Purple Steel. This deck would probably be pretty terrible into Purple Steel if we didn't play something like Pete to stop a strength on the draw. Like if they just get a strength off, we don't have Pete, we probably just lose. We like need to be the first person to sing a strength or Light the Fuse. And typically Purple Steel's not playing Pete right now. So like if you do hit a Pete on 3, you can get there first. And the Angela card's interesting. I haven't had a lot of time to test with this deck, but I theorize this card is kind of good because it reads until your next turn. So you don't have to just use this as an offensive card that like gets a good trade and it lives. You can use it as like I protect my Nala, or I protect my Lilo like a bunch, or my Diablo even. So like having something that protects a 2 cost and can sing strike next turn is like super important. We also play Sleepy, which is like a weird one. It's just a way to like give a +1 to Light the Fuse. So like you can go wide, then play a Sleepy plus a Light the Fuse and get like an extra +1 damage if they weren't expecting it, which can actually be important because you need to hit 4 or sometimes even 5 with the Light the Fuse to be like an important like value engine. And then finally, a card that like I never thought would see play, but I've always wanted to have see play because I'm a huge Treasure Planet fan, is Nathaniel Flint. This card reads, you can only play this card when you deal damage to something. Typically that's a really big downside, but a deck that's entirely built on we need to play like a Light the Fuse or a strength on 3 or 4, it's really easy to like slam this guy down. And having another like 2 quester is like pretty important. He's also beefy too, which is nice. So I was 3-0 with this deck. I've only played 3 games, but I was on the draw versus Blurpole and Purple Steel, which are kind of like the litmus test of Lorcana right now.
Yeah.
So like I have a little bit of hope that this can do something. At the very least, it's a nice experiment of, hey, curving out doesn't really matter what you do if you just take out stuff. So I think the deck is like fun. Maybe it's just a couple efficient 1 costs away from like actually being a real thing. I don't know. It also is just a deck that lives or dies by dock sometimes. Sometimes on the draw, like your initial curve doesn't get there. You need a little bit more time. You need to like hit those docks, which can be not always happen. But I like the deck. I think it's fun.
You heard it here first. We are winning the CCQ at Ink Inc. with Ruby Steel.
Yes, it's coming in hot. All right, pick it apart, destroy it. Let's see
what do you think, Zan?
I mean, I like it. I mean, Red Steel is like a really tough challenge, to be honest. I was thinking maybe we would give it another dimension by playing that red location. It costs a lot, but the thing I like about that card is it's the red location, the Christmas one.
The Graveyard of Christmas Future, the 4-cost inkable. It's got 8 willpower, 1 lore. Whenever you move a character here, put the top card of your deck under this location face down. At the start of your turn, you may put all cards from under this location into your hand. If you do, banish this location.
Yeah, I just like this card. I was just wanted to give it another draw engine, and kind of like shout out the card just because Red Steel's biggest problem is always like, how do we draw any cards to keep going?
Yes, this deck is very much we cannot draw cards, and we don't even have like efficient stuff that's quest for 2 in the 1-cost slot. So like we have to like do something else, right?
Yeah,
we have to find value in some other like place.
Light the Fuse is a limited all-star, so it makes sense to take the deck in that direction. So I mean, I like it, and Nathaniel Flint has always been one of my favorite cards. I've always been secretly hoping for like what was that card? Deal 2 damage to your character and deal 2 damage to your opponent's character. It was a song in red.
Oh, the really old song. Oh
yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
The Scar one.
Not Be King Undisputed.
We're gonna.
I just wanted them to bring that card back because we got the Rapunzel effect again, and red yellow has a remote chance. So if that, I really wish that card was in. So
Teeth and Ambitions.
Teeth and Ambitions. Yep.
Teeth and Ambitions are bared. Yeah, I think it's cool. I had no idea what to expect when you were given this challenge, and I think you exceeded it because I've never seen anything like this with the Ruby Steel. Like everybody that's playing Ruby Steel is like, all right, we have to play Challenge Matters. We have to get to our 5-cost Mushu. That's the only thing we can do. That's it. And you've added something here.
Can you think of the? I think it's the only DLC where a Red Steel deck made Top Cut.
No,
I
have no clue.
I didn't. How did I not hear about this? Actually,
Vegas. It was. Okay. It had what do you call it? The dock. But the main engine that it had in it was what's that location where when you move a dwarf there you deal 2 damage?
7 dwarf mine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
okay,
it had
so it's the mine deck. Yeah.
Yep.
Which I've actually heard some chattering about mine recently, and I know you talked about winning versus blue yellow with just playing a location that has lore attached. So maybe, I have always been like, man, we are way past the point of 7 Dwarves Mine being efficient enough to be played, but like maybe with the board wipe location.
I mean, it's kind of cute with the Angel.
Yeah,
you can take out a genie.
Yeah.
The children yearn for the mines is what I'm hearing here.
It would have to be Purple Steel if I had to guess the deck that would want to play it.
Yeah. I hope it comes back. I thought that card was super cool for a long time, and it was really fun to play. Obviously, in Amber Steel, it really shined. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Any final thoughts on deck building advice that you would give to the listeners of Podcana, Zan?
I mean, use your trade binder. I think looking through your trade binder is always nice. And when you like looking through your collection, whatever card you want to build around, just put it in your trade binder. And whenever you flip through it, it'll like spark the idea again. Maybe it's like 3 sets later.
I like that.
I think that helps.
Yeah. I do that all the time, but I'm like Dreamborn. I'll be like just scrolling and I'll be like, this card has to be good, and no one's ever played it or thought about it before. And then you play it, and it's like, no, there's a reason. Sky, any final thoughts on deck building?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much already said it, but like get creative with it. I think even quote unquote master deck builders like need to get exploratory because it's so hard to tell. A lot of the time, what determines a card is good or bad is in the current meta is the tempo of the game. And like if sometimes it shakes out that like, man, yeah, turn 4 is free for all these decks or something. There's not interaction that can disrupt this, or there's a way that you can keep it safe for that turn. And that is what it depends on typically, is like sometimes there's cards that sneak through and lines that sneak through because it's just you're one turn ahead. And I think cards like Akud help that a lot. I think that is a brewer's paradise because you do get to sneak things out there maybe clunkier early. So try things out. If you have something funky, play it against Blurpole. Wait for see if Elsa does just destroy it. Maybe it doesn't. Who knows? Like if it doesn't, and you have this sick engine that you saw, like that's how you get your name out there, right? Like if you find something that maybe people don't, they just write off right away because the Blurpole's got all these removal answers. So yeah, I think get creative. Don't be afraid to bust out the red steel and start lighting some fuses on people.
Light the fuse, baby. Yeah. Absolutely love to see it. Really appreciate you both doing a deep dive here on deck building, talking about the meta a little bit as well. Zan, thank you so much for joining us here on Podcana. Anytime you need us in the club, we'll be more than happy to show up. I'm
yeah,
sure.
we would love to have you guys. If you guys come down for CCS, that would be the best time. We just recently acquired a studio, and we would love to have you guys there in person.
Yeah, for sure. Talk about the Club Lorcana podcast. Tell us where can we find you? Your social medias. What do you got coming up? The floor is yours.
Check us out on YouTube. Club Lorcana. It's under my name, Zan Sayed. But yeah, I mean, we do a lot of the similar stuff. We talk about Lorcana, and then we kind of goof off. And then lately we've been just doing like a bunch of gameplay videos.
Yeah, those are super cool.
Thank you. And that's it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. For Zan, Sky, my name is Garrick. This has been episode 136 of Podcana. We will see you next week.